the reason they want to move within Bend, and sometimes moving to Bend also, is to lower their monthly payments, which, believe it or not, they're still doing even in this market.
This is Stephen Saunders, the Giveback Realtor with Avenue Realty. And today on this episode of Real Estate Industry Chats, we are going to be talking with Laura Blossey. Laura has been in the industry here in Central Oregon for over a decade. She is the go-to for anything that's in the upmarket. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation today. We talk all about the value that Central Oregon has when compared to some of those more expensive markets on the coast, everywhere, from north to Seattle all the way down south to San Diego. A lot of buyers, a lot of homeowners in those areas have their eye on Central Oregon, and Laura is going to talk to us all about, the considerations in getting here. All right, so before we continue on with our conversation, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Community Giveback program. And I just want to talk to you briefly about what it is. So at the end of every transaction, I give back between 5 and 50% of my net income to the community. 20% of that is client directed, which is awesome. Look at these two recent closings. We ended up writing a check to the NROTC and to the Bright Side Animal Center in Redmond. Those were client-directed contributions to these community charities. The remaining 80% of charitable funds are directed by you, my clients, the community, local artists, educators, charity volunteers. All of the stakeholders in our community have the opportunity to vote on where funds should go. So this is what's meant by the Community Giveback program. It's what's represented when you see this brand, the Giveback Realtor, a project that I care deeply about and hope that you will be part of. And with that, let's get back to the interview. Today, I am joined by the beautiful and lovely and powerful Laura Blossey. Welcome to the show. Let's talk some Central Oregon real estate. What do you say?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I'd love to.
Cool.
I'm the founder and principal broker of Avenue Realty. I was a realtor for about 11 years prior with a big brokerage and wanted to start my own brand and create my own culture and, really take my customer service and market knowledge to the next level and really focus on that and attract the best realtors in town like you. So, yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so you will see Laura and I on a lot of things, a lot of campaigns. We work together quite a bit. We've been on the other side of each other's transactions quite a bit over the summer. Mm-hmm. And she is an amazing mentor and just a very seasoned professional, very well known in the Central Oregon market. I was attracted to her in this business because she brings this very high touch, very concierge level kind of service, which is, if any of you know me personally, you know that I'm all about trying to just make the world a better, easier, funner, more beautiful place for you. And so Laura's helping bring that into the real estate world for me.
Yeah,
She's
thanks.
also really well known on really kind of like high-end listings.
That tends to be my niche. And also, by the way, I think moving here from Laguna Beach, California really helps me relate to, we have so many California buyers moving here, and even the Portland and Seattle buyers, we're all attracted to Bend for the same reason. And that's a higher quality of life, and it also is a lower cost of living. So I think that gap has narrowed a little bit over the years as Bend has gotten more expensive in Central Oregon in general, sisters too. But relative to where many of these buyers are coming from, it's a lower cost of living and it's just an easier place to live. So I think that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about and to talk with you is that I'm seeing a lot of clients who are not just, I call it down costing, because they may or may not be downsizing to a smaller house, but the reason they want to move within Bend, and sometimes moving to Bend also, is to lower their monthly payments, which, believe it or not, they're still doing even in this market of high interest rates. So have you heard that as well?
Well, I've been kind of on the, I haven't heard about that as much. I've been holding lots of open houses, as you know, and really kind of watching the market sort of shift from peak summer, things coming on and off the market within 30 days, and with this cold front coming and the interest rates, just this changing sort of affordability has been kind of in my experience is more discussion about creative financing.
Right.
But I
I think
have also
creative
heard.
financing is really dominating the conversations as a way to keep lenders in the game. And there are a lot of cash buyers here, but quite a few people still getting loans. And I think that we're all focused on these high interest rates. And so lenders are offering 2-1 buy down, or ask for a seller credit and buy your rate down that way, or the seller carry. And one of my most recent buyers said, I know that there's a lot of creative ways to do this. I just want to focus on the bottom line price though, and just do a low down payment, even if I'm paying mortgage insurance. And if we refinance later, that's great, but I don't want to get carried away in this conversation with creative financing and take away the focus from what price we're paying. And I thought that was really interesting because I did talk to her about, hey, let's do a higher price, but then asking for a larger credit. You can buy down your rate. She's very smart, but didn't want to hear it. And then I have other buyers who are moving within town, and they are moving. The reason they want to move is to lower their monthly payment. So even though they're locked in right now on a 3% mortgage rate, which is great, a lot of people are in the 3% range right now, they are still going to have a lower down payment. Even though on their new house, they're going to be paying 7.8%. And that's because they have so much equity in their current home that they're going to take a very large down payment, carry a loan that's less than half the loan amount of their current home, and have a lower payment that they know as they get closer to retirement age, they can whittle down over time and then have a lower cost of living than they do now. So it's kind of fun to work with so many different buyers who have different goals. And believe it or not, I'm seeing this down costing trend in spite of the high interest rates.
So I love that term, down costing, because it's really common to hear the idea of downsizing, like physically going from a bigger home into something that's going to be a little more cozy. But the down costing, it can it sounds like a way to be the smart money and think about taking advantage of the equity that you have in your house, taking advantage of sort of the silver lining in high interest rate environment, which is like having a larger tax deduction at the end of the year, because now instead of paying 3%, you're paying at 7%, or whatever that might be, and then really getting the most out of the market narrative, because as interest rates go up, we know that prices tend to come down to compensate for that, for the market. And so if you're able to plunk in your huge equity amount into your down costing subject property, well, you might have a higher interest rate for a little bit of time, but then that also can kind of come down maybe as rates come back down to earth.
Yeah, it certainly won't be that high over the length of your 30-year or your 15-year loan. But I think that there are some counterintuitive things going on right now. Higher interest rates are not necessarily bringing prices down. And in fact, Goldman Sachs and some of the other pretty respected financial institutions in America are still predicting 1% to 4% home price increase over the next year nationwide, in spite of the high interest rates. And that's because inventory is so low. So it's because some of the buyers are slowing down, and then sellers are also slowing down and selling because they have that fear of leaving their low interest rate, the security of that low interest rate, and moving into a higher interest rate. But maybe that's because they're not thinking about all the equity that they're likely to have in their home right now. So I think if we just have those conversations with our clients and really talk about what their goal is, maybe it's moving down costing, as I made up, but also being in the better house, whether it's different layout, a single level, different part of town. Most people are still moving to Bend for the lifestyle, because they might even take a lower priced job to live where they want to be, or we're in Zoom life right now where we can just work from home. Ben has been ranking high in the work from home even before Zoom was so popular, even before COVID. So that's still really happening here. So people are still taking their higher paying jobs and living in a lower cost of living city.
So just to get an idea, because we moved from the Bay Area, it's been about 3 years. Probably things have changed quite a bit since we left. That was sort of mid-COVID, now we're post-COVID. But you are still dealing with buyers that are coming from the Southern California market. How is it comparing? Like, how does it compare cost of living in Orange County or in Los Angeles County versus what you could do here in Central Oregon, Bend Sisters?
Well, I have an S corp for my business, and that alone is those tax fees, corporate fees, are much lower in Oregon compared to California. Things like DMV fees, things like groceries and gas and insurance, everything is cheaper here. Of course, it depends on what type of home you're moving from there to here, but I think the average price of a home in Laguna Beach, which is where I used to live, is over $6 million. The median,
The median, wow.
is over $6 million.
That's crazy.
The median in Bend right now is, we're right around $1 million. So it is all relative. Granted, you can still get a very small home in Laguna Beach for $2 million, but you'll get a much better home here for $2 million, or a really nice home for $1 million. So it's still the real estate is
I'm thinking about
less.
Sisters. That's where I am, right? And you can get acreage and have the Cascade Mountains like stepping into your living room for $2 million pretty much.
Right.
That is wild to me.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I was just looking up the highest price sale in Sisters within walkability to downtown was $1.8 million last year. So you can't even spend $2 million if you wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anything else that you're finding? That's factoring into your discussions with these kind of inbound buyers from out of state.
I've also seen people who will do everything they can to keep their current home and make Bend their second home, even if they plan to move here. And it gives them a little bit of security, like, oh, well, what if I don't want to retire soon after all, or if I want to move back? And that's what we did when we moved here. We just thought, we're moving to a random place we've never been. I visited for 12 hours before I bought my house. We kept our house, and then we were able to rent it out. So it gives you the security of being able to make the move when you otherwise might not want to full-heartedly commit. And then the rental rates can usually cover your payments, and then it lets you straddle both towns and decide where you want to live. So it kind of helps, especially for people whose kids are already out of school, and then they can make sure that they want to live here. But Forbes did an article about Bend was rated one of the best places to retire in the entire country. And 2 of my buyers were actually interviewed for that article. They moved here
that's
from...
awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. They moved here from the Bay Area, and one of them moved all the way from South Carolina. So they just wanted a better place to retire that's also still active, is beautiful, has a good quality of life, and that's why they chose Bend.
So did they, in their sort of journey in getting to Bend, did they talk to you a little bit about where else they had considered, and how did Bend stack up against those? Like, I know some of our friends looked at buying in Lake Tahoe, for example, right? Which that was kind of, an option that gives you some active lifestyle, maybe a little whiff of hippie, but it's close to the Bay Area. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you found, and how did they decide that Bend was the place for them?
A lot of times people vacation in Bend first. In the Bay Area family, they had friends who were vacationing here. They came together. Their friends moved to Bend and bought a home. And then they started visiting and are like, we've got to move there. And then when they were showing photos of their home and just talking about the neighborhood to their Bay Area friends. Their Bay Area friends are saying, well, we've got to move there. So sometimes it's just, getting that one channel of friendship or family who moves here. A lot of people have roots here. They've moved away and then they really want to get back. The South Carolina people, I think, honestly, they'd never even been here. So I sold them the home over the phone as they were driving here. They pulled over. We did a FaceTime tour of the home. We talked a lot about the city, and they signed documents and saw the home when they got here. It was crazy. But that was
Wow.
the most rapid sale I've done lately. They just, heard a lot about it. I've had other clients who literally spreadsheeted the whole country. They drove all over in their RV with their kids. They narrowed it down. They had a column for cost of living and the rating of the schools and the neighborhood. And everything. It was super detailed. They narrowed it down to Park City and Bend. They were even looking down to airport routes. And they went back and forth. And their realtor in Park City and I were comparing notes as they flew back and forth to look at homes. And then they landed in Bend because it had,
Wow.
it just, yeah. So it just depends on the person. It's really fun.
What an interesting process. I kind of would love to see how that spreadsheet, and I'm a little bit of a nerd that way, so it would
I
be
know,
cool
me too.
to
I
see.
love spreadsheets.
There's just something about the rows and the columns. They're just so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so tell me, so my story was I came to Sisters as a stowaway. My wife grew up in Blackbeat Ranch, and she'd always wanted to come back. She'd been in California for a long time. And then when COVID happened and we had our kids, it was an opportunity for us to come back home. And I was actually really reluctant because, it's a smaller community and I've always been in a big city. But now it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine moving back to the Bay Area at this point, just with the quality of life and all the things that you can do here and just having a small town feel. It's pretty cool. But I am curious to hear, because you had a sort of a different story, right? You were traveling up here or vacationing up here, and then what happened?
No. Oh, no. It started with a meeting with our financial advisor saying, you realize you live in one of the most expensive parts of the country in Laguna Beach. And we're like, oh, no wonder we're not saving any money. Like, I didn't realize that because you're just living your life and you just caught up in it. And we had talked to some of our friends who had a second home in Lake Tahoe. And they decided to move there for a year just to get a different feel of life and a different experience. And then they moved back to Laguna Beach. And we said, well, what if we do that? Maybe we should move somewhere else. Because we had sales jobs. It didn't matter where we lived. And then we'll move back to Laguna. And my husband had read about Bend in Men's Health magazine. Said it looked pretty cool. I got online, found the Visit Bend spot. It looked amazing with all the trails and outdoor living. And houses were dirt cheap. At the time, it was 2011. So dumb luck here on our part. But we booked I'd never heard of Bend. We booked a flight, and literally the next day we're in contract on a home. Like, we just loved it.
Wow.
Oh yeah. We'd never been here. And
That's like love at first sight.
We are a little spontaneous, but we also kept our home in Laguna Beach. So because we're like, well, we'll move there for a year and then we'll move back. But when we got here, it was so easy to live. We met people really easily. The cost of living was so much cheaper. It was just a really fun, easy place to live. That when we got to that 1 year mark, we decided to renew the rental in Laguna Beach. And then when we got to the 2 year mark, which is where capital gains could kick in, right? If you have to live in your home 2 of the last 5 years, or you pay capital gains on it. It was a big decision point of whether we sell Laguna Beach or move back there. And we just decided to stay in Bend, and we kept that house. So renters have been paying down our mortgage in Laguna Beach, and then we have appreciated so much price gain in Bend. And since we've moved here, we've bought and sold a triplex, we've flipped a home, we built a spec home, we own a rental home. Like, we've been really, really active in the real estate market as a way to grow our wealth. And that's why I love talking to my clients about all the things that they can do, because we've done it all ourselves. And I can really speak from experience on how to do this, how to leverage your money, how to really get in the market. And I think if people are trying to time the market just right, and they're going to, rent for a while or hold and wait to buy. The environment could be completely different, and I think you should just always be in the market, even if you think you're buying high. Maybe you beat out the competition and got a better home because of that, or you can refinance later. But over time, you're still going to be fine. Just like the stock market, it's going to go up and down. So does real estate. But if you look at trends over time, you're going to be better off if you stay in the market and get in whenever you can, regardless of what the rates are.
It's like I've heard this old adage of it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. Seems like kind of what you're saying here.
It's exactly right. Over the last 63 years, prices on average across the whole U.S. have gone up 5%. So that's even taking into account some crash years, some really bad years, taking into the high COVID years. Like, it's just steady Eddie over time. And if you try to time it exactly right, you might miss a peak, or you might miss a trough. Just my advice is just get in and stay in one way or another.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch on, since you have holdings in California and in Central Oregon now, because you have your rental home there. What have you noticed in terms of sort of that trajectory in those markets? It would seem to me that, like, I know, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about how your portfolio in both places has changed over time.
To our surprise, our appreciation in Bend has been much more than the appreciation in Laguna Beach. It surprises us. So even...
Well, I mean, it has me thinking, like, when you look at startups, and they're growing, they're doubling their growth every year. And it's like, well, they're only going to double so much, because then they get to, you can't double forever, because then you're bigger than, the entire stock market in 10 years. But you can double from, 1 to 2 employees and 2 to 4 employees, you could double. And it seems like, I wonder if there's that kind of dynamic where Southern California is already on the high end of the market, so there's not there's tons of room to expect that, there's not that pool for the upside. But with Bend, it's sort of this undiscovered, still relatively so, undiscovered place that presents a lot of value, a lot of quality of life value for people to kind of step off the treadmill of, really, really expensive marketplaces with high cost of living and other challenges.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think even if you look at dollars, though, and not just percentages, I think we've done better in Bend than we could have there, which is incredible.
Wait, tell me more. What do you mean?
Just in terms of our gains on real estate. And maybe because it's overall a lower price market, we're a little more nimble and can afford to buy and sell and take equity from one and put it in another. Whereas in Laguna, it might be like all the eggs are in one basket. That might be a benefit.
This goes back to average price in Laguna is $6 million. Average price in Bend is $1 million. So you can do a lot with, $1 million of equity. I understand.
Yeah. And then, I think just different strategies of looking at investment versus whether it's a long-term investment rental, short-term rentals, primary homes. It's kind of nice to be able, if you can, do multiple types of properties, and then you're kind of also hedging your pets. So maybe we have, right now we have a rental home and we have the primary home that we live in. And one might be valuing higher than another, but at least we have some leverage and could do something with it.
Yeah, and a little diversity, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those people around, I know that again, Los Angeles County I know is a big one, and I know the whole Bay Area is Bend is sort of on the map there. I remember being there, people talking about taking trips up in the summer to go camping or go mountain biking. But if they're thinking about a second home or thinking about trying what you did, right, is exploring for a year but still keeping a foot in California. how do they go about exploring that, and how do realtors like us help them in that process?
Well, I think the best thing we can start with is what their goal is and their timeline. So maybe someone has kids that need to finish 2 more years of high school. So that's a distinct timeline for them. Or if they're going to say, okay, we're going to try this and I am able to work from home, we make sure that they get a letter from their employer validating that they're able to do the same job from home so that they can qualify for that loan. Or maybe their job is to do the down costing. Or I'm working with a buyer right now from Napa. They're on 75 acres. They're in a 2-story house. It sounds amazing, but they're in their 60s. They want to simplify. They're doing a road trip, going to Bend, Eugene, Ashland, where else? A few towns in California. Like, they are doing a road trip and checking out all these towns. I just sent them a big overview of Bend, but I know that their goal is to have some more walkability, a little easier property. They have a big budget, but they won't need to spend it here to get something incredible. So just to help understand what their goal is and then how it might be satisfied here, I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like almost like this is where kind of the realtor team really sort of shows up, because it sounds like if you're able to sort of cash out in Napa it sounds like you could be on a winery even, right? You're trying to get out of there, like there's going to be now, it's really entering a new chapter of life, and how do you sort of navigate that? What questions should you be asking, and how do you answer them? What lawyers, financial planners, and so on and so forth do you need to help you really clarify that plan? But it does seem to kind of revolve first. The first question is, where do you want to be? And
why? But why?
And why? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. The why is a big one. Yeah, because it could be, why not move to, the islands up in Washington versus Bend? They're very different experiences. Mm-hmm. So you've been kind of close to downtown, right? Most of your time in Bend? And you've been here since 2011, you said, right?
Yes. Well, January 2012. So it'll almost be 13 years.
So you moved in 2012, but you came and you fell in love with the house in 24 hours, and it was like the Vegas wedding home buying experience.
That's how I roll.
That's awesome.
I take forever to buy a loaf of bread at the grocery store, but I can buy a house really fast.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like, great. So what have you seen that has changed in the 12 years that you've been here?
In Bend? Mm-hmm. Well, certainly prices. They've definitely shot up. But I don't know. I mean, we're seeing a big population growth. I know in Sisters, it's going to double population in the next 20 years. Granted, it's going from 3,000 to 6,000, but in Bend, we're going to see another 20,000 people in the next 10 years. And it makes a difference. So good and bad. We're seeing wonderful people moving from out of town who are bringing their skill sets and even bringing their restaurants. They're bringing the third restaurant from Laguna Beach, Manhattan Beach. Now there's one in Bend. Another restaurant from San Diego is actually opening in Bend. So it's kind of neat that we're getting new flavors and people bringing those things in. We're getting more concerts, for just more events, more things to do. And so that's a good thing. But of course, with it becomes more traffic, or I actually have to make a reservation for a restaurant now where we didn't used to have to. But I think it's a small price to pay for just the town getting better and better. Yeah.
But I mean, those things were, I certainly remember OpenTable being one of my most used apps in San Francisco, right? Because everywhere that we wanted to go was, you have to make a reservation.
Right.
But just in terms of there was something that I was concerned about when I left. I loved going to the museum, for example, on a regular basis, or going and seeing, different shows, or being able to have any kind of food that I wanted. And Sisters is still pretty small, right? So we don't have a ton of options in that way. We have like some pretty amazing world-class events that happen in Sisters. But I know Bend is a lot bigger. It's kind of like, it's really the big city that's near us. And I can only imagine how that's changed over the last 14 years in terms of what kind of culture and dining options are available.
Yeah. No, there's much better. I think that there's also better shopping. I'm not a big shopper, but I do know that some people will like go to Portland for the weekend if they're really into shopping and do a girls' trip to Portland. For example, that's just not my thing, so I don't really care about the shopping. Yeah,
I'm kind of with you.
yeah,
I like going to galleries and just seeing art, and I don't even necessarily need to buy it, but it is fun to, to see and not necessarily have to have.
yeah.
But there's also like, I mean, I know Northwest Crossing is kind of one of the newer developments in Bend, and they have the summer months. You've got the street fair or the farmers market. Like what other kinds of events do you know about around town that have sort of been coming up as Bend has been coming up?
Right. I think that the Bend Film Festival is a really good example of an artistic endeavor that started about 20 years ago, actually exactly 20 years ago. And we're getting a lot of very creative people moving to town, people with who are programmers of film, programming the right films. We're in competition with the Sundance Festival, and you could be nominated for an Oscar by being played in Bend. So we had
Whoa,
filmmakers
what?
all over. Yes, for real. So
Wow.
we had a filmmaker from Denmark, filmmakers from New York City, from LA in Bend in October for the film festival. And it's actually it's really on the map now for the film festivals. We had, I think, 2,500 submissions for 125 spots to be in the film festival. So things like that are drawing audiences from all over the country and even from other parts in the world, I think that are just showing that Bend is really reaching out and getting creative and drawing all kinds of, I think, even new kinds of people with different skills that is making our town richer. It's wonderful. And I know the art scene is really good in Sisters, and it's really good in Bend too. We've got the First Friday Art Walk. We've got galleries all over town. We have grants for artists. There's Tower Theater is a performing arts center, and they're doing grants and children's education. So, we're tiny compared to San Francisco and the art scene, but it's something at least. And if you want to get involved, you could be busy every week going to events.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you guys watching are ever interested in coming up, and I'm thinking of there's like there's like a beer fest that happens down at the old mill. I remember going there with Hillary one time, because Bend is like all about the libations, right? You've got the microbreweries, you have wine from the valley. So there's all these different kinds of events, all different ways to tickle your fancy, so to speak. So those of you that are watching this, I'm going to see if I can compile a list. If you guys are ever in town and just want a host, Laura or I would be glad to show you around.
That'd be
we
fun.
have this. It would be awesome. I mean, please reach out to us. There's nothing better than getting to show a new friend around town.
And new wineries too. Wine bars all over the place now.
Yeah, well, throughout Bend, I mean,
Yeah.
even here in Sisters, we have a kind of a really well known couple tasting rooms and one wine bar, and actually we have this refinished house. It was it's totally a sidebar, but I'm just going to go with it. Like, it's called the Wakefield House, and it has a basement that was used during Prohibition to keep alcohol. So
Really?
we had this party. It was like a speakeasy, yeah. And so the owners are like, if you guys ever have guests that are coming to just want to be here for the weekend, look at houses, we would be glad to host them for that. So yeah, that's out there. If you wanted to come from California and stay in a really cool, basically piece of history that dates all the way back to Prohibition days, let me know. I will be glad to arrange that for you.
I'll
And
bring
show
the
you around.
gin.
Sounds good. But you have to bring it in one of those old little 20s buggy cars, you know, with that little hat that's like this, and yeah, that'd be better.
Well,
Well, if you could believe
we
it,
digress all over the place, but that was fun, and we can have a more focused topic with whatever anyone wants to hear about.
yeah, absolutely. I'll put both of our contact information at the bottom. We're both the bubbliest, most conciergiest, most wonderful realtors that you will ever meet here in Central Oregon. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. And if you need questions beyond the real estate, really figuring out the planning and you don't have those resources, Laura certainly knows a bunch. I have deep resources as well in that. So we'll be glad to kind of help you along your way to just to get your questions answered. So please feel confident that you can start to ask questions and that there's people here to help you kind of find your way. I think that's pretty much a good stopping point. If you could believe
thanks,
it,
Stephen.
we have been on this call for 35 minutes. And it feels like just time's gone by.
We could
No, this
talk
is
forever.
awesome.
Thanks,
We
Stephen.
totally could. So, yeah, great. That's all we got. Thanks for joining Real Estate Industry Chats with the fabulous Laura Blossey and your host, Stephen Saunders, the Giveback Realtor. See you next time. Bye.